In one of the coldest and most difficult regions for farming in Europe, Norway has built a food production machine worth $29 billion a year. Offshore, millions of salmon grow in icy waters inside large-scale industrial fish farms that can closely control both their living conditions and growth. Along the fjords, apple orchards cling to steep mountain slopes and still produce ripe fruit after a short summer, where just one early frost can threaten an entire harvest. Farther north, where cropland becomes almost useless, sheep and reindeer turn sparse, cold grasslands into valuable sources of meat. So what is the key behind Norway's remarkable success? Let's explore it with Mandarin Tech. Norway has an almost unlimited natural resource just off its coast, where cold, deep, oxygen-rich waters stretch along more than 100,000 kilometers of fjord-lined coastline. Using these natural conditions, the Nordic country has built one of the most advanced salmon farming industries in the world, producing more than 1 million tons of salmon each year and contributing over 133 billion Norwegian kroner to the economy. The process begins at hatcheries. The water temperature is kept stable at around 10 degrees Celsius. Eggs and sperm from selected broodstock are artificially fertilized, then incubated in oxygen-rich freshwater for about 60 days. Norway currently operates nearly 1,200 marine farms, with more than 1.2 million salmon being raised at the same time in giant sea cages. Below the surface, the entire stock is monitored almost continuously. Cameras track fish, density, and movement. Sensors record changes in environmental conditions, while automated feeding systems deliver feed into the cages based on the actual needs of the fish. With water conditions remaining stable at around 14 degrees Celsius, the salmon can grow quickly without the need for artificial cooling systems. After nearly 2 years, when the salmon reach a weight of up to 6 kilograms, harvesting is carried out using vacuum pumping systems or specialized seine nets. These methods help reduce stress on the fish and maintain meat quality. Once collected, the fish are pumped directly onto harvesting vessels through closed pipe systems, where they are stunned using cold, Q-rich water under controlled conditions to reduce physiological activity. Immediately after harvesting, the salmon are transported to processing plants within the same day to ensure freshness. Here, the fish are placed onto conveyor belts, where workers remove the heads. The bodies then continue into filleting machines, where blades run along the backbone to separate 2 large fillets from the central skeleton. Each production line can process nearly 500 fish per minute. Next, each fillet is trimmed to remove the belly section, excess fat, and any tissue that does not meet quality standards. Pin bone removal systems extract the small bones that remain inside the flesh. On modern production lines, cameras and X-ray systems identify the location of bones as well as the size and shape of each fillet. This data is then used to guide blades or water jets, cutting the fillets into portions with predetermined weights. The Flexicate salmon system can process around 36 fillets per minute, while specialized pin bone removal machines can handle up to 108 fillets per minute. Finally, the products are packaged under temperature-controlled conditions close to 0 degrees Celsius. For global export, the salmon can be rapidly frozen using IIF technology at around -40 degrees Celsius, helping preserve the cellular structure and meat quality for long-term storage of up to 18 months. Leaving the offshore salmon farms behind, the journey continues inland to Hardanger, one of Norway's most important fruit-growing regions, accounting for more than 40% of the country's domestic apple production. Here, more than 700 hectares of apple orchards are not spread across flat plains. Instead, they grow in layers along steep slopes overlooking the fjords, squeezed between rocky mountains. Just one night of severe frost can damage young flower buds. To protect them, Norwegian apple growers use water and ice as a shield. When temperatures fall below -4 degrees Celsius, water is sprayed onto the blossoms. As it freezes, it releases heat and keeps the flower tissue around 0 degrees Celsius. The branches may be covered in ice, but the buds inside remain protected. Once the risk of frost has passed, thousands of beehives are brought into the orchards just as the flowers reach full bloom. The bees move constantly between the trees, carrying pollen from one blossom to another and helping maximize fruit formation. When autumn arrives, Hardanger enters its peak harvest season. Picking is still carried out mainly by hand to reduce bruising and protect fruit quality. Depending on the terrain and tree density, each worker can harvest more than 600 kilograms of apples in a single day. Immediately after harvesting, the apples are transported to packing facilities. There, they pass through washing conveyors before entering optical sorting systems. High-speed cameras scan each fruit to identify its size, color, and surface defects. At Hardanger Fjord, this line can process up to 4 tons of apples per hour. After sorting, apples that meet commercial standards are weighed, packed into trays or boxes, and moved into cold storage to slow ripening, maintain crispness, and extend shelf life. Apples that do not meet appearance standards are still used for processing. They are crushed and pressed using high-capacity hydraulic systems to extract the juice. The juice is then filtered and pumped into stainless steel tanks with capacities of up to 20,000 liters. At around 18 degrees Celsius, yeast converts the natural sugars into alcohol while preserving the characteristic aroma of the apples. The cider is then aged for several months to allow its flavor to stabilize and become more balanced. Once it reaches the required quality, the cider enters an automated bottling line, where bottles are continuously filled, capped, labeled, and packed into boxes. A single production line at the facility can handle more than 10,000 bottles during an 8-hour shift. The cold that was once seen as a limitation for agriculture ultimately helps create a product with a distinctive identity of its own in Hardanger. The journey continues deeper into inland Norway, where barley becomes one of the few crops capable of standing up to the short growing season and cold climate. Barley has a growing period of around 120 days, tolerates cold conditions well, and is well suited to the Nordic climate. This allows it to make full use of the short period when the land is actually suitable for cultivation before the cold season returns. Each year, when the fields begin to turn golden in late August and early September, a race against time begins. The harvest window lasts just over 2 weeks. Across fields divided by low hills and uneven terrain, 250 horsepower combine harvesters of medium size are a practical choice. They are flexible enough to move between smaller fields while still carrying out several harvesting steps in a single pass. At the front, the cutting header slices through the stalks. Inside the machine, a threshing drum rotates at around 800 revolutions per minute, separating the grain from the ears. The grain is then cleaned by sieves and transferred into the storage tank. The remaining straw is chopped and returned to the field, helping restore part of the organic matter to the soil. Immediately afterward, the barley is transported to silos, where ventilation systems help control moisture at a safe level below 14% and maintain grain quality during storage. From there, the crop is divided according to its final use. Most of the harvested barley is used as animal feed, accounting for more than 60% of total production. Higher quality batches, with suitable protein content and uniform grain size, are sent to malting plants. There, the grains are soaked in water, allowed to germinate, and then dried to produce malt, the ingredient that helps determine the color, aroma, and much of the flavor of beer. From fields with a harvest season lasting only a few weeks, Norwegian barley continues its journey as a key ingredient in beers produced across the country. If barley is a crop chosen for the climate, potatoes have helped Norwegians survive harsh winters since the 17th century and gradually became an important part of the country's cuisine. Much of Norway's farmland was formed from sediments left behind by glaciers. As a result, the soil can contain large amounts of rocks and gravel, making potato harvesting difficult. As the harvester moves along each row, the front blade reaches beneath the tubers and lifts the potato-filled soil from the ground. A mechanical system powered by more than 350 horsepower then digs, screens, cleans, and transports the crop in one continuous pass. The mixture of potatoes, soil, and stones moves onto vibrating screening belts. The bars lift and shake the material, allowing loose soil to fall back onto the field, while rollers and separators remove stems, stones, and debris with minimal damage to the potatoes. Finally, the cleaned potatoes move up an elevator conveyor and onto a discharge belt, which transfers them into a trailer traveling alongside the harvester. After harvesting, the potatoes are transported directly to the factory and fed into an automated receiving system. Load sensors maintain a feeding rate of around 15 tons per hour. The potatoes then pass through a multi-stage washing system where recycled water at around 4 bars softens the soil stuck to the surface, while swirling water jets and rotating drums continue the cleaning process. Thanks to the filtration and water reuse system, water consumption can be reduced by up to 60%. After leaving the washing area, industrial cameras scan each potato, identifying its size, shape, and defects with an accuracy of more than 98%. Potatoes that meet the required standards are automatically sorted, weighed, packed into bags or boxes, and sent to the distribution area. Potatoes that do not meet appearance standards are still used on the potato chip processing line. First, they are peeled, inspected, and passed through high-speed cutting blades to create evenly sized slices. The slices are then washed to remove excess surface starch, helping prevent sticking and maintain a more stable color during frying. Next, they are blanched at around 90 degrees Celsius to stabilize their texture before further heating. After draining, the slices pass through hot oil at 180 degrees Celsius. Moisture quickly escapes from each slice, while the surface gradually turns golden and reaches the required crispness. At the end of the line, the chips are cooled, weighed into portions, and automatically packaged as finished products. When the terrain becomes too steep, the soil too thin, and the growing season too short, even barley and potatoes struggle to grow. Each year, as the snow begins to melt and summer returns, more than 2 million sheep across Norway are moved up to mountain pastures, where they live almost freely throughout the warmer months. They move across steep terrain, drink from mountain streams, and feed on plants growing naturally across the slopes. The environment itself also helps shape the animals. Norwegian sheep are well adapted to cold conditions, with thick wool that helps them retain heat, even when temperatures in high mountain areas can fall below 0 degrees Celsius during summer. As summer comes to an end, temperatures begin to drop and snow prepares to cover the pastures again. The sheep are gathered and brought back to the farms. After each grazing season, the flock continues to generate economic value. Sheep wool is collected after shearing, with each sheep producing nearly 5 kilograms of raw wool. First, the wool is sorted by fiber thickness, length, and quality to determine how it will be used. Suitable batches are then cleaned in hot water at around 60 degrees Celsius to remove dirt and the natural oils coating the fibers. The wool is then dried and passed through carding machines, where tangled fibers are separated and aligned in the same direction. High-quality fibers are drawn out, twisted into yarn, and wound into large rolls before being sent for weaving or knitting. Through this process, raw wool is transformed into material for sweaters, blankets, and other warm textile products commonly associated with Norway. Alongside the wool, sheep meat also enters the food supply chain. The meat is rapidly chilled to around -4 degrees Celsius to control microbial growth. Some of it is used to make fårikål, Norway's iconic lamb and cabbage stew. The dish is cooked at around 95 degrees Celsius for about 3 hours, allowing the meat to become tender, the collagen to gradually break down, and the flavors to blend together. The farther north you go, where winters are longer and snow covers the land for months, Norway relies on reindeer. animals extremely well adapted to the cold and capable of surviving temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius. Today, Norway has more than 200,000 reindeer. The herds move across large areas with the seasons, heading toward grazing grounds in summer and shifting to different feeding areas when winter arrives. Beneath deep snow, they use their strong hooves to dig down to the ground and search for lichens and other low-growing plants that can still survive in freezing conditions. But managing herds of this size across such a vast territory is a completely different challenge. And in a place that seems far removed from modern agriculture, technology begins to appear in the Arctic sky. Camera-equipped drones are sent into the air to locate the animals, observe their movement, and identify groups that have become separated from the main herd. Some reindeer are also fitted with GPS collars. Location data helps herders track migration routes, identify grazing areas, and receive warnings when the animals approach roads or other high-risk zones. Once the herd is gathered, technology continues to support management on the ground. Electronic identification tags can be used to monitor weight, body condition, and classify individual animals. Breeding stock for the next generation and animals raised for meat production. From this selection process, reindeer meat enters a processing system that follows Norway's strict food hygiene standards. The animals are processed and cleaned, with the skin and internal organs removed, while veterinary inspections are carried out to ensure food safety. The meat is then divided into different cuts, from premium products for restaurants to processed or frozen products for wider markets. It is rapidly chilled or deep frozen at around -18 degrees Celsius for long-term storage while helping preserve its natural texture and flavor. Finally, the meat is vacuum-packed and distributed to supermarkets, restaurants, and export markets. Norway has no endless plains and no ideal climate for agriculture. Instead of seeing this as a weakness, the country turns every natural limitation into an advantage, from cold seas and deep fjords to high mountains and the Arctic tundra. Norwegians create value through efficiency, technology, and the ability to make the most of what nature provides. Sometimes, the strength of a production system is not about how much nature gives us, but how intelligently we use it. Could this be one of the world's most inspiring agricultural models? Share your thoughts below and follow Mandarin Tech for more technology stories.